So, folks, we're in the middle of a constitutional crisis. Things are bad. In fact, it's not good out there. There's a lot of danger associated with this. To kind of sum up where we're at, there are a number of courts putting pauses on different executive actions that Donald Trump is trying to take alongside Elon Musk, who is his chosen avatar or agent to run amok within our government. And they're trying to gut the entire system so that at the end of the day, they can give the richest men to ever exist trillions of dollars in tax cuts. I think to the tune of something like $4.5 trillion in total, just as a baseline, is kind of what they're aiming for. And so we've been seeing a whole lot going on, and I'm just going to try and summarize. It's not going to be everything, but the some of the most important beats that have been going on. Um and number one, we have to start out with Nathan Tankus. Okay, Nathan Tankus over on Notes on the Crises is maybe the most required reading for any of you in order to understand exactly the depths of what is happening here. I'm going to link this piece in chat. In fact, it is that important. So, to kind of summarize a lot of these findings, um, the court in the court ongoing court case around Doge and the U.S. Treasury payment system. Um, Basically, to give you a rundown, when Donald Trump came in, he brought Elon in as like some kind of undefined employee, and retroactively, they're trying to say that Elon was a special government employee, and they're trying to basically just redefine a bunch of illegal things that they did as legal, but in retrospect, it's very weird, and it's not particularly bright or intelligent. Um, but it remains to be seen whether or not they'll get away with it. So one of the first things to happen in this case was that a judge put a temporary injunction on the Doge Treasury payment system, and it actually took several other judges also putting their injunctions together to stop Doge from doing what it was doing to the payment system, which um, essentially included giving an employee, Marco Alez, both read access as well as writing access, meaning that he had the ability to edit parts of the payment system. And that is really bad because basically the plan that has been becoming clearer and clearer as every day goes by is that in so far as Donald Trump cannot directly control where money goes, because that's Congress's job, according to the Constitution, he decided that the Doge team would seize control of the Treasury payment system in order to effectively steal Congress's power over the purse. Meaning that instead of Congress deciding where money goes and where money gets spent, Donald Trump and Elon Musk would decide where money goes and gets spent. And that is fundamentally one of the biggest problems here. And that's setting aside one of the other biggest problems, which is if this system breaks, like the entire global economy goes with it. This is why only a handful of people are supposed to have access. Um, and so, what does an injunction do? Well, basically, these injunctions are putting a temporary hold on this access, saying, "Hey, you actually can't have access to this while we figure out as a court what is going on." Right? And initially, the story was, oh well, all of the people accessing the system are just it's all just read only. That was a lie. People had read and write access to the Treasury payment system. Information was changed. Now, in this new slew of court documents gone over by Nathan Tankus, again, highly recommend you guys read through that. Um, the Trump administration is trying to argue that Marco Alez was accidentally given read and write permissions over the US Treasury payment system as part of his training. Just a little whoopsie daisy where he got given read and write access to the entire one of the most highly guarded systems in the United States. Just a little whoopsie daisy. And as Nathan Tankis kind of alludes to here, there's not a ton of evidence out there right now that the Trump administration uh that their cover story isn't accurate, but there's also not really that much evidence to indicate it is accurate. And it seems like they are shifting their story in order to meet whatever the reporting is at the time when they are required to make arguments in court, in order to make it seem like they're complying with the law. So I can't definitively say that they are lying about Marco Alez being given read and write access to the US Treasury systems, but it sure does seem like one of the weirdest fucking things you could possibly do. Um yeah, that's the thing, Salmon Moose. Like, this is an ancient system, and they're trying to say that, like, he was given read and write access, but only to, like, a separate sandbox instance of, the payment treasury system. And it's like, that's none of this sounds correct. None of this at all seems like how you would actually give someone access or train someone in this, right? So there is that. Now, let's go to this particular part here, which is interesting. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, this Mr. Alez never knew of the fact that he briefly had read-write permissions for SPS database, and never took any action to exercise the write privileges in order to modify anything within the SPS database. Indeed, he never logged in during the time he had read-write privileges, other than during the virtual walkthrough, and forensic analysis is currently underway to confirm this. When I first read this paragraph, I laughed for about a minute straight in incredulity and disbelief. What you are being asked to believe is that the most sensitive systems in the world, systems being scrutinized by much of the world for the first time, had accidentally been put under the full control of Marco Alez. You are also being asked to believe that this applied to only one system, and the investigation launched was just to make sure nothing bad happened during this accident. And what do you know? They confirmed it. What is interesting about this story is it is perfectly shaped to fit the reporting from Wired and myself as much as possible while providing an innocuous explanation. This is roughly the equivalent of a student giving the excuse, I slipped on a banana peel and my dog ate my homework. Apparently, the Trump Musk Treasury Department has innovated in the field of slapstick comedy far beyond the capacity of Charlie Chaplin to imagine. And, that is kind of where we're at. Yeah, no, it's all nonsense, chat. Like, this is not this was not a whoopsie daisy. You don't whoopsie daisy into doing this, you know? Let's see here. Okay. Skipping a little bit ahead here. As I've made clear, I find the convenience of these explanations preposterous, but I want to emphasize that aside from the fact that I stand by the accuracy of all my reporting, I do not have specific information at the time of writing to facilitate refuting Treasury's news stories. I want to emphasize what both Wired and I have explained in our reporting. Read-only access is still catastrophic, and it does not matter very much whether dangerous and possibly unconstitutional code is put into testing and production by a Doge employee themselves, or ordered by Doge and implemented by career civil servants at the Bureau of Fiscal Service. Nor does modifying the payment system to implement unconstitutional directives at the operational level even necessarily require read only access. And that's true. the danger posed here has already been done, and by playing cute with these cretins who have access to it, um, it really just gives them more opportunities to abuse their positions in power. Okay. Um, Now I'm going to read this particular part, um, which Nathan Tankis really wants to emphasize here in his piece. There is a key phrase in his affirmation. We're talking now about yeah, Thomas Krause, the senior kind of overseeing the Doge team in the Treasury Department. This is part of his statement. 2. Ensuring that the Treasury Doge team was leveraging its unique technological expertise to help operationalize the president's policy priorities for the early days of the administration, including by helping identify payments that may be improper under his new executive orders. When I wrote my piece published the morning of February 3rd, I was hoping that my rhetorical question about improper payments was ghoulish overkill. And to quote Nathan Tankis from that piece, is wokeness, the Green New Deal, Marxism, and gender ideology going to be the new definition of improper payment? It turns out that I was dead on, unfortunately. To spell this out explicitly, the Krause statement is an admission, perhaps inadvertent, that they are pursuing using BFS systems to impound spending, and that they are going to rhetorically cover this by defining impounding spending as improper payments. As I stated in this piece, improper payments are in the eye of the beholder in this situation. So basically, the entire thing that they are saying out loud here is just, we are going to define improper payments differently. And that definition is going to include just anything we don't like. And any of those improper payments, well, we'll just shut those down. You see, what we're talking about here is, despite the court orders, despite the legal attempts to wrangle these people, they are continuing in court to argue that they, in fact, have the authority to strangle entire departments and parts of government, usurping the powers of other parts of the government, other branches of government. Okay? That's that's what they're saying. And this is a pretty big problem, guys. This is the core of the constitutional crisis. It has not been resolved. It's merely festering here. Okay? So, yeah, this is Nathan Tankis goes into a lot more technical detail here about treasury account symbols, and basically, in this system, they want to use these treasury account symbols to flag anything they are deeming improper, stopping stopping that payment. You know, if something is going to, I don't know, house homeless, homeless people through FEMA after a natural disaster, and they're like, some of those homeless people might be too woke. Well, then that would get flagged in this system. And when I say that would get flagged, I want you to understand that they are not talking about a human being is looking at these payments and says, yes, this is woke. It's worse than that, guys. They want to set up an AI. They want to set up a large language model in order to automate the destruction and unfunding of different parts of our government. Okay? That's what they're doing. They're not they're not going to have people doing this. They're going to have an AI device doing it for them. So anything that might get flagged with language that would be considered woke or fall into different categories that might be considered woke, they're just going to defund. That is the goal of this program. It remains to be seen whether or not they will succeed, but that is the goal. And yeah, it's not. Again, you all need to read this piece. It's quite eye opening. I want you guys to know I did actually reach out to Nathan Tankus to see if he'd come on the show to talk about it. Haven't heard back yet. Um, but yeah, this is interesting, and this is all going on even as Doge continues to cut and gut different parts of the U.S. government. Just today, Doge started gutting the Treasury Transformation Services. A dozen workers at the technology transformation services. Dozen workers there got fired today. Similar cuts at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Okay. Um, they are gutting everything and every system that might stop them, and they are trying to, basically do as much damage as possible before a judge tells them to stop. Because here's the thing, guys. Part of their goal here is destruction, right? Part of their goal here is, you fire as many people as you can get away with. Ignore the fact that you're going to get sued for this illegal activity, and ultimately, what that means is even if that lawsuit comes through and you fight that lawsuit could take years. In that time, those people are going to go get new jobs. It doesn't matter, you know. If what you're doing is illegal, if functionally you've broken the system anyway. So that's their goal. Um we live in some particularly silly times, to say the least. And in case you were wondering about the lawsuits, how are those going? Well, not great. More lawsuits, of course, came together today, but um, today a judge ruled that the government could, in fact, go ahead with this buyout plan, um, which has so far, I believe, the number's up to somewhere around 73,000 federal employees have taken up the offer to resign. Um, And here is a headline from today. Judge rules Trump's sweeping plan to persuade federal workers to resign can move forward. Comes courtesy of U.S. District Judge George A. O'Toole Jr. So, yeah, basically, the entire argument was from the judge was essentially, hey, uh, you as unions don't actually have standing to bring this lawsuit. So we're going to allow that plan to go forward. So, this deferred resignation program has been allowed to continue, and as a result, you'll never believe what they did with it, guys. The second they won that court battle, you want to know what happened? They shut down the program. So there is no longer a deferred resignation program, so that's good, but it was allowed to go through. So to me that kind of indicates, oh, they they don't want that to keep going. Some To me that says, oh, this is fishy as hell, and they want to keep this 75,000, fired without putting like it at risk that maybe the government would bring them all back. So now they have a batch of resignations on file? Kind of, yeah. All of this is just like power plays. They're trying to get people ready to leave. They're trying to get people that they know want to leave, and now maybe they can fire them without honoring that resignation agreement. There's a whole lot of fuckery you can do with the information provided by this resignation program or deferred resignation program. It's not great. Well, yeah, it also would mean that if the court validated this, they would actually have to, presumably pay these employees. Um, so yeah, no, it's actually legal. We genuinely don't know that, Adam 684. That there is no indication of that. There's a difference between something being legal and a judge dissolving a restraining order. Those are two different things, actually. So it kind of remains to be seen what's going to come of this, but it's definitely weird. Um, Also, let's just take a look here. This is ABC News's coverage here. As President Donald Trump's second administration continued its effort to swiftly reshape the federal government, a union representing foreign services officers at the U.S. Agency for International Development accused the administration of failing to comply with last week's temporary restraining order to prevent the dismantling of U.S. aid. Also Tuesday, the Environmental Protection Agency reported that 11 DEI and 160 environmental justice staffers had been placed on leave as the agency tries to comply with Trump's executive orders. And Trump signed an executive order that enforces the work of the Department of Government Efficiency and enables Elon Musk to implement plans to slash the federal workforce. The two appeared in the Oval Office, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That is not the. Damn it. Well, find that later. So, also talking about USAID, um, yeah, the first victims of that being cut off have begun to die. Um, so that's news that I think we should all be aware of. A 71-year-old woman dies after being sent home from USAID funded hospital. Others die after hospitals close in refugee camps. Um, yeah, there's something particularly monstrous about building and paying and maintaining these refugee camps and without any warning whatsoever suddenly shutting them down, leaving people to literally die. There's something in particular monstrous about that that's I think blatantly obvious to anyone who has a beating heart, you know, who actually gives a shit. Um in other news, about these about these uh, court cases, um it's also bad news. According to the judge that placed, that put the injunction on a blanket freeze of funds across the federal government, that same judge has ordered that FEMA can freeze money via its normal processes. Now, what's really interesting about this particular story is just how batshit the government's argument was about why it would be a totally normal thing to freeze the funds that were supposed to go to New York City. And so let's just take a look here. All right, take a look. All right. Okay. Okay. So on Tuesday, that's yesterday, Cameron Hamilton, the acting head of FEMA, asked the court for permission to freeze funding that the agency was providing to New York through the Shelter and Services Program. Under that program, which was approved by Congress, FEMA reimburses state and local governments for housing migrants who are released from federal custody. So remember we covered this story yesterday about how four brave staffers at FEMA approved for payments to be made to New York, specifically for housing migrants, right? You guys remember that? Um, those four employees were fired, and on top of that, today the news came out that FEMA reached into the private bank accounts in New York and took $80 million, the funds that had been dispersed to New York for the housing of migrants as appropriated by Congress. Now, you might be like, well, that's a pretty extreme action. Why did the court allow this? According to Mr. Hamilton, New York was using a substantial portion of its funding under that program to house migrants at the Roosevelt Hotel in New York City. He said that FEMA believed, based on news reports, that a Venezuelan gang had taken over the hotel, using it as a base of operations to plan a variety of crimes, including gun and drug sales and sex trafficking. Now, he went on to say that unless we immediately pause funding for migrants in this hotel, the agency will be funding criminal activity. Um, Now, keep in mind, he did not have to substantiate this belief in court. He didn't have to provide any evidence that the Roosevelt Hotel had been taken over by Venezuelan gangsters. You know what? Let's just see if we can find what news reports he's referring to here. Um, Roosevelt Hotel, Venezuela gang take over. Let's see. No. Okay. Roosevelt Hotel. Hmm. That's interesting. Here we go. The New York Post, of course. Of course. How bloodthirsty Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua used New York City migrant shelters to build a criminal empire, hiding in plain sight. Well, let's see here. Let's take a look at Roosevelt Hotel. Okay. In Jackson Heights, a stretch of Roosevelt Avenue. Well, we don't want Roosevelt Avenue. We want the Roosevelt Hotel. There we go. For the majority of asylum seekers, the gang is a stain on their community and an example of the rampant violence and lawlessness that forced them to leave their homelands in the first place. Quote, I wouldn't want the violence I grew up with to start here, one Venezuelan migrant at Manhattan's Roosevelt Hotel said Sunday. I wouldn't be here if I saw what I saw in Venezuela. I brought my kids here so they wouldn't have the experiences with criminals like how it is over there. Which is so interesting because that is the only mention of the Roosevelt Hotel in the New York Post piece. And again, a lot of this is just not substantiated. It's a lot of this is like that Venezuelan gangs are taking over Colorado apartment buildings. It's that same narrative being applied here, except instead of this being like a fear-mongering thing to spur support for Donald Trump in the election, or to I don't know, virtue signal to like that your network is turning more conservative in its news coverage. Instead, it's actually being used in court as part of the reasons that the US government should shut down funding for housing the unhoused. That's where we're at. That's where we're at. So, with that being said, yeah, they argued in court. Well, all of the migrant shelters in New York are taken up by Tren de Aragua, so we can't fund them anymore. Is basically the cartoonishly buffoonish argument that FEMA made in court, and the judge basically said that nothing in his previous order prevented the defendants from continuing to use routine processes. So basically, it's just normal. It's just business as usual. It's just normal. It's just what, you guys have that power normally, so I guess you can use it, kind of thing. Sure, you might be lying, but they also like the scope of this judge's freeze is to the broader U.S. government doing that, right? Um, not to, can an agency use its existing powers to freeze funds? And like the answer to that still seems to be yes. Yep. So yeah, that's where we're at with that. Now, you might be asking yourselves, well, okay, so but they're trying to freeze, like the main purpose of this freeze is to find all the fraud, right? Like the they're going on and on about all of this fraud that is rampant in the, US government. Surely they've found some by now, right? Right? Well, here's Caroline Leavitt, White House press secretary, responding to asks about where's all the fraud?
As for the actual receipts, we are happy to provide them, and I actually brought some today because all of you know I love to bring the receipts. We have contracts upon contracts that we can send and provide this information to you. Let me be very clear. We are not trying to hide anything. We have been incredibly transparent, and we will continue to be. These are screenshots of contracts that DOJ found across our government. This is a DEI contract, $36,000 for U.S. citizenship and immigration services. That is against the president's policies and his America First agenda. This is a $3.4 million contract, a Council for Inclusive Innovation at the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, Department of Commerce, another DEI contract that DOJ identified. I can continue to go through these. Oh, I love this one, $57,000 for climate change in Sri Lanka. What is this doing to continue the interests of the American people? Absolutely.
Yeah, what could, I don't know, fighting global catastrophe do for the American people? You're right. It's not like America's on planet Earth or anything. But also, like, yeah, what is a DEI contract? The thing is, all of the fraud that she's talking about here are contracts between the US government and consultants or contractors who come in and do work for the US government. That's not fraud. That's just an exchange of goods and services. Now, they call it fraud because they don't like the services being provided. But it's not fraud. It's just a gigantic joke to these people. None of this is actually real or helping anyone whatsoever. On the note of climate change, helping everybody, here's Bernie Sanders having a moment in the Senate earlier today.
Mr. Chairman, just a very brief response.
Absolutely.
Let me just ask my friend, Senator Lee, and he's a friend. We've worked together on some issues. You used the word climate alarmism. The 10 last years are the warmest years ever recorded. We're seeing massive extreme weather disturbances all over the world, not just in the United States. Do you think that that is alarmism, or is it the reality that climate change is an enormous threat?
Look at him. He looks like a child who's like been caught being mean to grandpa. My God.
To this planet?
I think acknowledging weather conditions and temperature conditions around the world can tell us things. I don't think that throwing hundreds of billions of dollars at a problem with an eye toward ultimately spending tens of trillions of dollars on a problem, one that's going to impoverish the American people.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, he's like, oh, well, climate change is real, I guess, but it's expensive to fight. These people are so deeply unserious. The second you call them on their bullshit, they crumple like wet paper bags. Yeah, no, that's the thing, Paladin. Like all of this, like whether it's climate change funds or DEI or whatever, they have to claim that it's fraud so that they can justify cutting it from their spending, right? It's so that they can use those systems they've taken over at the Department of Treasury to shut off all of these fraudulent charges to the US taxpayer. Also that, they can commit $4.5 trillion worth of fraud and hand that over to the richest people that currently exist on the planet. That's their entire jam. It's literally the government equivalent of, what's that over there? And then like just hustling away with like the, a sack of money from the bank. It's literally the equivalent of that. Well, that's the thing. They have Congress, they have the House, they have the Senate. They could simply just pass a budget that includes these things. But the issue is like they kind of want the president to have their control while they get those tax cuts together. They want the president to take the heat for them. Because they know that every single one of them is going to be accountable to their voter base. Oh, and of course, Democrats in the Senate may actually have a spine. That's true. I think you need 60 to pass in the Senate for a budget. It's a problem. But, luckily, there are a few members of Congress who are waking up to the threat that is being posed. And, so far, a lot of them are limited to speeches, though I'm not sure. In some cases, I'm not sure exactly what they, as like rank and file Dems in Congress, can do if they're not in the leadership. But, it's nice to see anyway that some people are rising up and speaking out.
Mr. Speaker, the House is on fire. The House is on fire. There is nothing legal or constitutional that is going on. We have unelected billionaires running the country. And this is not a political grab for power. It's a crime. I marched into our Speaker of the House's office to try to meet with the Treasury Secretary to ask them why they were committing crimes, why there was unchecked authority over Treasury data, to stop doing it, why they needed to do this, why they needed to surveil, penalize, or control this financial access. And the Speaker told me he had no idea what they were doing. The Speaker of the House does not know what they are doing.
Third most powerful person in the US government, Speaker of the House, third in line to be president. That was Congresswoman Gwen Moore, for those of you asking. I believe she represents Wisconsin. Wisconsin's fourth. Now, again, we've got folks like Goldman here, Mr. Goldman in Congress, also speaking up.
We have the power of the purse. Maybe it's wasteful, maybe it's not. I have no idea. You have no idea. But it's a blatant violation of the law and the Constitution. And apparently, my Republican colleagues are so weak and afraid of Donald Trump and Elon Musk that they're willing to undermine their own constitutional authority just to please them. You're giving away your own power in fealty to Donald Trump. So, Mr. Chairman, I ask that for our next hearing, we actually do some oversight and accountability of what this administration is doing right now, not what the Biden administration did years ago. And I yield back. We have the.
So it is nice to see some Democrats standing up to this. We also have Greg Kazar here, doing a good job holding the fort down. What I'm enjoying here is I'm seeing a widespread of rhetorical approaches here, and I think they all have their pros and cons.
Talco, do you know how much money a day Mr. Musk will receive from the federal government for his contracts?
No.
The answer is $8 million a day. Just last year, Elon Musk was promised $3 billion from close to 100 contracts with the federal government. Ms. Royal, do you know how much the average person in this country who survives on Social Security, one of our seniors who's worked their entire life, about how much they have to survive on a day?
I do not.
$65 a day. We're not looking into Elon Musk's $8 million a day. This subcommittee, chaired by Marjorie Taylor Greene and the House Republicans, is looking into your grandmother's $65 a day. Let me be clear. I think we would all support taxpayer savings, look into money we might needlessly send to billionaires and big corporations, find taxpayer savings, and send it back to your hardworking family. Talco, do you know?
Honestly, like more rhetorical stuff like this. Part of the issue here is that a lot of Americans, I think there is a certain subset of like politically aware Americans who are like, oh man, democracy is really important. We need to defend democracy as a concept because kings and dictators are bad and will, absolutely destroy and decimate us as a people. And then there's a certain other subset of the population, and it's much larger, which is a lot of people who are not all that politically aware, who don't really know the ins and outs of like democracy versus something else. But if they were approached by that something else, that be it tyranny, dictatorship, monarchy, whatever, and that something else was to offer them, a better standard of living, they'd probably jump at that. They'd be like, yeah, that makes sense. I would like to have a better standard of living. And I think for those people who are not super into the rhetoric of like democracy versus autocracy, I think Greg Kazar's argument here makes a lot more sense. Like, yeah, actually, $65 per day for, someone who's worked their entire life yeah, that makes sense. You're right. You should be looking at the billions of dollars a billionaire is getting from the government. That there's more money there. There's more contracts. You should look into that. Like, I think that is more effective for the vast majority of people. And while I do, if you guys watch the show, I do bang the democracy drum quite a bit. But ultimately, a lot more people are motivated by these material concerns, by these material arguments. Have I done a deep dive onto Peter Thiel's network cities? I have not, but we will. Tell you that much. Got a whole segment prepped and everything, but we got to get through the necessary stuff today. Now, also to the credit of the Democrats in the Senate, Democrats are doing what little they can with a minority in the Senate at this time. There's not that much they can do in the Senate outside of, getting hung up on different points of order and procedure. But thankfully, due in no small part to public pressure, um, we have Democrats here led by Ron Wyden, um, leading a Senate floor hold ahead of the RFK Jr. vote to try and coalesce enough pressure on Republicans in order for them to stand down and not confirm RFK Jr. That being said, there is a time limit for how long they can hold the floor, and it is 30 hours. So, in solidarity and in hope that that will get more attention and get more pressure on Republicans, Senate Dems are going to be holding the floor for 30 hours. So, that is kind of where we're at here, and that's quite interesting. It's nice to see, especially because maybe one of the most infuriating stories in all of this, short of the stories directly describing how these Hitlerite political figures on the right are, trying to take control of our country even as we speak. We have the Democrats in the House. And I say that with a lot of contempt because these are people who should be our allies. These are people who should be doing the most. These are people who, viewing the state of play and seeing like the history of who has opposed the Democrats and thwarted their plans time and time again. One name comes up, and it's Mitch fucking McConnell. And Mitch McConnell managed to delay and block things as like a goddamn minority party for years. For years. Meanwhile, you have these spineless jags. This is according to Axios reporting from earlier this evening. Dems pissed at liberal groups Move On and Indivisible. And if you've been paying attention to my coverage, you know that literally the only groups that seem to be taking this seriously are groups like Move On and Indivisible. And literally everyone else seems to be asleep at the wheel and seems intent on being asleep at the wheel until it is altogether far too late to do anything about this corporate administrative coup of America. Okay? Hakeem Jeffries is spineless. They're like, I cannot conceive of a situation where I have in the past ever just been like, we need to coordinate a call-in campaign to get this motherfucker to resign. Because frankly, he is worthless. Absolutely pathetic. So what are they pissed about? What are Democrats pissed about? Let's take a look here. Let's take a look at the Axios article. A closed-door meeting for House Democrats this week included a gripe fest directed at liberal grassroots organizations, sources tell Axios. Members of the Steering and Policy Committee, with House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries in the room, on Monday complained activist groups like Move On and Indivisible had facilitated thousands of phone calls to members' offices. People are pissed, a senior House Democrat who was at the meeting said of lawmakers' reaction to the calls. The Democrat said Jeffries himself is very frustrated at the groups who are trying to stir up a more confrontational approach to opposition to Trump. A Jeffries spokesperson disputed that characterization and noted to Axios that their office regularly engages with dozens of stakeholder groups, including Move On and Indivisible, including as recently as Monday. There are a lot of people who are like, we've got to stop the groups from doing this. People are concerned that they're saying we're not doing enough, but we're not in the majority, said one member. And oh, oh boy, I'm gonna read through all these quotes, but I need you all to know I'm fucking incensed. These are people who are complaining about being asked to do their jobs. They're being asked to preserve our democracy. These are people complaining that the folks they work for are checking their work. This motherfucker. Like, no, yeah, literally, Paladin. Like, yesterday we talked about how Hakeem Jeffries, before he decided how he was going to start reacting to the current moment, the current moment where tech oligarchs are starting to do a fascist coup of America, an administrative coup of America, so that they can get their little tech oligarchy cities built. What did Hakeem Jeffries do? He went to Silicon Valley and talked to his tech oligarch donors to ask them what he should do. So is it any wonder that of the Democrats that are actually doing things in the House of Representatives, he's one of the notable folks who has decided that he is going to bravely do exactly jack and shit. Pathetic. Tony Stark was able to build this with a box of scraps in a cave. All right, let's continue here. Okay, continue here. Saki Tanuki, thank you for the 5 gifted tier 1 subs. I'm not worried Hakeem Jeffries visited 150 plus Silicon Valley donors, unlike Bernie, who's visiting districts that flipped Biden 2020 to Trump 2024 nationwide. Yeah, exactly. Some Democrats see the callers as barking up the wrong tree given their limited power as the minority party in Congress. It's been a constant theme of us saying, please call the Republicans, said Representative Don Bayer, a Democrat of Virginia. And I just have to say, guys, you would not be receiving phone calls if you were doing your jobs. You know who I'm guessing doesn't have to take a ton of phone calls from pissed people in her office? Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ilhan Omar, Jamie Raskin. They're actually out there. Bernie fucking Sanders. They're actually out there day after day fighting for us. We can see it. We see the effort. We hear the speeches. We see them constantly stand up for what is right and what is just. And when we look at your Hakeem Jeffries in the Democratic House, we don't see that. And so we need to call you over and over and over to tell you to do the right thing that your colleagues are already doing and that you refuse to do because you are taking money from the same rich fucks that are currently trying to take over the United States. Pretty soon, these phone calls need to be asking these motherfuckers to resign. Pretty soon, these phone calls need to be saying, I until I see you doing something, I'm planning on endorsing whoever primaries you. You work for us. Don't get it, don't get it, don't get it turned. I reject and resent the implication that congressional Democrats are simply standing by passively, said Representative Richie Torres, Democrat of New York. We are in the middle of the greatest constitutional crisis since the Civil War. And these people are complaining about being asked to do their jobs, to do the bare minimum of actually coming together, holding the line, and being obstructionist as hell. Because that is what we need right now, and they are not delivering on the very simple premise of just not doing their jobs. That's what we're asking them to do. We're asking them to shut this down. We're asking them to slow everything down, get bogged down in the process, get bogged down in like decorum. Slow it down. And when begged to do that by their constituents, they're like, "Oh, we're being asked to have some kind of spine and not go along with what our billionaire donors are telling us." Andrew S., thank you for the $5 dono. Even more importantly, thank you for the commitment to call and annoy them every day. If we need to live in this hellscape, they do not deserve a moment of peace. True. Now, folks, remember, when you do call, try and make it about a different topic every day of the week. Call them every day, but talk about a slightly different topic that is still related to what is going on. Because that way, it tallies up as 5 different calls throughout the week. Okay? If you guys need help contacting these government offices and contacting these people who are responsible, um, I'm about to I'm about to drop all of their names. Okay, so just pay attention to that. That being said, Axios does do the service of actually quoting some folks from Indivisible, notably co-founder Leah Greenberg. People are scared, angry, and they want to see more from their lawmakers right now than floor speeches about Elon Musk. Indivisible is urging people who are scared to call their members of Congress, whether they have a Democrat or a Republican, and make specific procedural asks. Our supporters are asking Democrats to demand specific red lines are met before they offer their vote to House Republicans on the budget, when Republicans inevitably fail to pass a bill on their own. Okay? Now, keep in mind, folks, that this is not the steering and policy committee is not necessarily like all of them were not necessarily complaining about this. So there are the Senate and steering committee is large. There's a lot of people on it, and I'm about to read off all their names. So here is who you need to reach out to if you hear your elected representative, just to be on the safe side. You've got co-chair Representative Nanette Berrigan, Democrat of California. You've got Representative Robin Kelly, Democrat of Illinois, co-chair. You've got Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz, Democrat of Florida, co-chair. You've got Representative Pete Aguilar, Democrat of California, and the Democratic Caucus chair. You've got Representative Ted Lieu, Democrat of California, Democratic Caucus vice chair. You've got Representative Rob Menendez, Democrat of New Jersey, freshman representative. Then you have Representative Hakeem Jeffries, Democrat of New York. You've got Representative Catherine Clark, Democrat of Massachusetts. You've got Representative Joyce Beatty, Democrat of Ohio. Representative Sanford Bishop, Democrat of Georgia. Representative Salud Carbajal, Democrat of California. Representative Troy Carter, Democrat of Louisiana. Representative Judy Chu, Democrat of California. Representative Jim Clyburn, Democrat of South Carolina. Representative Steve Cohen, Democrat of Tennessee. Representative Angie Craig, Democrat of Minnesota. Representative Henry Cuellar, Democrat of Texas. Representative Sharice Davids, Democrat of Kansas. Representative Madeline Dean, Democrat, Pennsylvania. Representative Diane DeGette, Democrat of Colorado. Representative Rosa DeLauro, Democrat of Connecticut. Representative Suzanne Delben, Democrat of Washington. Representative Debbie Dingell, Democrat of Michigan. Representative Veronica Escobar, Democrat of Texas. Representative Josh Gottheimer, Democrat of New Jersey. Representative Al Green, Democrat of Texas. Representative Raul Grijalva, Democrat of Arizona. Representative Josh Harder, Democrat of California. Representative Stephen Horsford, Democrat of, of Nevada. Representative Steny Hoyer, Democrat of Maryland. Representative Jared Huffman, Democrat of California. Representative Sarah Jacobs, Democrat of California. Representative Pramila Jayapal, Democrat of Washington. Representative Susie Lee, Democrat of Nevada. Representative Doris Matsui, Democrat of California. Representative Betty McCollum, Democrat of Minnesota. Representative Jim McGovern, Democrat of, oh God, what is MA? Massachusetts. Jesus. Sorry, I'm not good with the acronyms. Representative Gregory Meeks, Democrat, New York. Representative Grace Meng, Democrat, New York. Representative Richard Neal, Democrat, Massachusetts. Representative Joe Neguse, Democrat, Colorado. Representative Donald Norcross, Democrat, New Jersey. Representative Frank Pallone, Democrat, New Jersey. Representative Jimmy Panetta, Democrat, California. Representative Nancy Pelosi, Democrat, California. Representative Ayanna Pressley, Democrat, Massachusetts. Democrat Jamie Raskin, or Representative Jamie Raskin, Democrat, Maryland. Representative Linda Sanchez, Democrat, California. Representative Jan Schakowsky, Democrat, Illinois. Representative Hillary Scholten, Democrat, Michigan. Representative Terry Sewell, Democrat, Alabama. Representative Darren Soto, Democrat, Florida. Representative Mike Thompson, Democrat, California. Representative Dina Titus, Democrat, Nevada. Representative Paul Tonko, Democrat, New York. Representative Lori Trahan, Democrat, Massachusetts. Representative Lauren Underwood, Democrat, Illinois. Representative Maxine Waters, Democrat, California. Representative Nakema Williams, Democrat, Georgia, and Representative Frederica Wilson, Democrat, Florida. If you are in their districts, email them, call them, visit their offices. Every single person on this list, and I know some of them, handful of them in the House, are good eggs. You know, Ayanna Pressley, good egg. Maxine Waters has been showing up to these indivisible protests. Okay? But there are a lot of people on this list who have not gone within spitting distance of any of these rallies, any of the movements. Okay? If your representative is on this list, I want you guys to commit and to call them today. That was every Democrat on the Steering and Policy Committee. Okay? If you heard their name and you know they aren't doing shit, I want you to commit to calling them, emailing them, and getting out there to knock on their door of their office as much as you can. Fun fact, Debbie Dingell took over the seat vacated by her husband, John Dingell, who held the seat for 59 years. Jesus. Yeah, you can find a written list at the link that Somniostatic just shared in chat, and I'm going to share on the other chats. That is in fact, where I got the names that I am using. So at legistorm.com, you can find all of those members. But this is so infuriating. Okay? Call them, email them, knock on their office doors. Be firm, be polite, but be persistent. Okay? And if you live in a spot where your representative is a conservative, do the same thing, but encourage them to break from the Republican Party to oppose this fascist coup of our country that is currently ongoing. Okay? Yeah, B. Parker, it's not a big story, but Donald Trump purged the Kennedy Center board and appointed his own folks, and then they made him the chairman of the Kennedy Center because he essentially wanted to make himself head of the party planning committee. And I'm not going to lie, that all sucks, but it might honestly galvanize the Nancy Pelosi types in Washington, D.C. more than any kind of human suffering elsewhere in the country or on the planet. Additionally, the more time Donald Trump dedicates to throwing parties is less time he has to dedicate to destroying America. So, I only see this as a win, I guess. Okay. But we need to move on here because we do have a few more things to talk about, right? Number one, just in case y'all are wondering how cooked Twitter is these days, here's an actual ad that was run on Twitter. This is an actual paid advertisement that ran on twitter.com. A post that you can see very clearly marked ad Nixon Groiper. Imagine being born a Gentile in this generation on this continent, located an ocean away from Europe, and viscerally hating this one foreign dictator from 80 years ago for no reason other than my teacher showed me Schindler's List, or the museum tour guide told us he turned Jews into soap, and still believing that at the age of 30 or 40, Lamau, it's time to start reevaluating your perspective of history. Elon Musk's platform is just openly running Nazi ads.
As someone whose father performed for 19 years in the Kennedy Center, and as someone who performed there as well for 4 years, the war on arts hits hard.
Damn, Saki Tanuki, you performed at the Kennedy Center? First of all, that's really cool. Kudos. Second of all, yeah, sucks to see. And thank you for the 5 gifted tier 1 subs. I do appreciate that. Yeah, guys, in case there's any doubt about, the guy who runs this platform throwing a Nazi salute and now is running Nazi ads. Dude's a Nazi. The entire, he's a Nazi. It's not rocket science. Now, one of the other additional court orders that dropped today, Chief Judge Boasberg has ordered Department of Justice not to remove any January 6th videos from a database the court previously ordered to be accessible to media, and to identify any videos removed because, wouldn't you know it, the Trump administration seems to be destroying January 6th evidence, which seems like a really weird thing to do if, you were completely exonerated and, that nothing untoward happened. So court had to step in and say, you actually can't just remove this because Congress required it to exist. God. We're really in the shit. We're really in the shit. Additionally, we won't watch this entire thing, but I do think it is worth taking a look at what this is. So, for some context here, Donald Trump was doing an interview in the Oval Office and Elon Musk barged in. Apparently, not planned out, which is why the camera is so, wonky between the two of them. And guys, I'm not going to mince words here. Elon Musk is certain. I can't say this legally speaking as a certainty because I'm not 100% sure he was zooted to hell, but he did certainly seem to be zooted to hell. Okay, like I've been throwing this up every so often here. If I can, yeah, here we go. That is not the look of a man who's tethered to reality. A lot allegedly here doing a lot of lifting. Anyway, just watch a couple minutes of this because you could like Elon is like using his child as like a shield. It's very weird.
The goal of Doge, and I think a significant part of the presidency is to restore democracy. This may seem like, well, aren't we in a democracy? Well, if you don't have a feedback loop, okay, X, we would have to, if you
He literally named a human child X. I hate him so much.
It's all right. So, tell you, gravitas can be difficult sometimes. If
Yeah, if gravitas can be difficult sometimes, maybe it's almost like you shouldn't bring your child into a press event. It's almost like you're only bringing your child to this press event as a distraction to cover for the fact that you are high as a kite right now. It's almost like that, allegedly.
if there's not a good feedback loop from the people to the government, and if you have rule of the bureaucrat, if the bureaucracy is in charge, and then what meaning does democracy actually have? If the people cannot vote and have their will be decided by their elected representatives in the form of the president and the Senate and the House.
That's what they've done. But that also still is bound by what the Senate and the House did previously. They don't just get to rip up every law that's been passed since 1776. That's actually not how it works.
Then we don't live in a democracy, we live in a bureaucracy. So it's incredibly important that we close that feedback loop, we fix that feedback loop, and that the public's elected representatives.
Wait, what did his kid say?
Well, democracy, a significant part of the presidency, is to restore democracy. This may seem like, well, aren't we? Is to restore democracy.
I honestly can't interpret child speak that well. I'm not sure that is what that child said.
Citizens, and not simply be servicing vast amounts of debt.
And also, could you mention some of the things that your team has found, some of the crazy numbers, including the woman that walked away with about 30 million,
right,
etc.?
Well, we do find it sort of rather odd that there are quite a few people in the bureaucracy who have ostensibly a salary of a few $100,000, but somehow manage to accrue tens of millions of dollars in net worth while they are in that position, which is...
Yeah, almost like, I don't know, they were investing or something. This is not fraud, though. Acquiring personal net worth despite being a bureaucrat is not evidence that they are stealing money from the government.
You know, what happened at USAID, we're just curious as to where it came from. Maybe they're very good at investing, in which case we should take their investment advice, perhaps. But just, there seems to be mysteriously they get wealthy. We don't know why. Where does it come from?
You know, that's an interesting question to ask from the guy who is allegedly finding all of the evidence of fraud. You know, like if you are the guy in charge of finding evidence for a crime and you say, yeah, someone, we're investigating murder cases, and this lady's grandma died, and that's kind of suspicious, Did she die from old age? Did she get murdered by her nephew? Who can say? Who can say? A lot of mysterious things going on here. Like that, it doesn't mean anything. You're the person who's supposed to be investigating it. You present this with facts. That's how an investigation works. No, Trump doesn't look like he's on tranquilizers. Trump looks like he's shutting up because the guy who bankrolled his entire campaign is in the room.
I think the reality is that they're getting wealthy at the taxpayer expense. That's the honest truth of it. So, we're looking at
like you guys have to understand the dynamic that appears to actually be playing out here is that Trump, someone who defers to nobody, is deferring to Elon Musk because Elon Musk is exponentially more wealthy than Donald Trump, or at least on paper. And to Trump, that paper means a lot. So he is deferring to the actual king.
say, well, we won't just, if you look at, say Treasury, for example, basic controls that should be in place, that are in place in any company, such as making sure that any given payment has a payment categorization code, that there is a comment field that describes the payment, and that if a payment is on the do not pay list, that you don't actually pay it. None of those things are true currently. So the reason that departments can't pass audits is because the payments don't have a categorization code. It's like just a massive number of blank checks just flying out.
Yeah, remember what we said about this earlier? He's talking about categorization codes. The reason that is important to Elon Musk is because he wants to automate the US Treasury payment system. Something that was already automated, but he wants to automate it with an AI, ultimately making all of the decisions rather than a human being. And because he wants to set it up that way, every payment needs that categorization, right? This is just further evidence of that being the case.
Building. So you can't reconcile blank checks. You've got comment fields that are also blank, so you don't know why the payment was made. And then we've got this truly absurd, a do not pay list, which can take up to a year for an organization to get on a do not pay list. And this, we're talking about terrorist organizations.
Yeah, no, unironically though, hit the mat. Like if you automated this system and you were a bad faith actor, you could literally do the Office Space scam and just have basically a machine that prints money for you. I mean, they also just got rid of the penny, so, you know. What? He's just talking nonsense? This is all bullshit? It's all bullshit unless you realize what they are trying to do behind the scenes, and then it becomes very sinister bullshit.
We're talking about known fraudsters, known aspects of waste, known things that do not match any congressional appropriation, can take up to a year to get on the list. They're no longer making new pennies. And even once on the list is not used. It's mind-blowing. So what we're talking about here, we're really just talking about adding common sense controls that should be present, that haven't been present. So you say, like, well, how could such a thing arise? That seems crazy. When you understand that really everything is geared towards complaint minimization.
Understand that this guy is one of the dumbest motherfuckers alive, and he's basically had a team of 19-year-old to like 22-year-olds running around, mucking around in these systems that have been built to never fail. And those teenagers explained this system to him, and now he's trying to explain it to all of you to make himself seem smart. That is his entire game.
So then you understand the motivations. So if people receive money, they don't complain, obviously. But if people don't receive money, they do complain. And
like what genuinely. Yeah. You know, when people receive the paycheck that they worked for, they don't complain. And when people don't receive the paycheck that they performed labor to get, they do complain. Wow. Elon posted on Twitter, only arslers think the government uses SQL. He's really fucking stupid, guys.
And the fraudsters complain the loudest and the fastest. So then when you understand that, then it makes sense. Oh, that's why everything just, they approve all the payments at Treasury. Because if you approve all the payments, you don't get complaints.
Because it's a payment system. Its job is to facilitate transferring funds from point A to point B. That's it. It is not designed to be a mechanism to shut off payments. That is supposed to be handled by people on either end of that transfer, not the system itself. If the system isn't transferring a payment, that's because the system has failed. And that's a catastrophic problem.
But now we're saying that, no, actually, we are going to complain. If money is spent.
This is called fire alarm testing. It's a method of tech readiness testing, but this is fucking stupid to run from the government. I can do an explainer if you want. I would appreciate one. Thank you.
Badly, if your taxpayer dollars are not spent in a sensible and frugal manner, then that's not okay. Your tax dollars need to be spent wisely on things that matter to the people.
Yeah, you know, something that Congress is supposed to do. Like, the people who decide what money gets spent on are those in Congress, those elected representatives, not Elon Musk, an unelected bureaucrat. God. I'm going to hop on with Paladin Lost real quick for an explainer. Howdy, howdy.
Hey, can you hear me?
I can hear you great.
Okay, so I am a senior IT manager at a company. I've worked for Boeing and Bayer and Microsoft and a few other big companies. I understand this. So what happens when you have a really large company is you have a sprawling IT pile, like because everybody has their own computers and there's all these projects, right? And people spin up computers and requisition computers, and what happens is a lot of times projects will get canceled in midway or they'll die, and whoever was supposed to decom them won't decom them correctly. So a lot of companies will have computers that are in the system and on and active and using power and don't do anything. But they don't do anything. No one logs into them. No one does anything. So when you do a fire alarm test, what you do is you intentionally break as many things as possible. You intentionally fuck the system up. And the reason being is that if once you fuck everything up, then what you do is you use your help desk as a method of restoring the things that matter. That's what he's talking about when he said the people that really matter will call in, and then eventually we'll fix it. And that's great in an IT setting because, so the idea is if things are broken, they stay broken and they're gone. And if we get complaints, then we're good. Then we know those are valuable and we turn them back on. But in an IT setting, that only costs you money, time, and productivity. But the problem is that when we talk about the federal payment system, we're talking about people and places and other companies. And these companies have already started projects and already are in progress. For example, I live in St. Louis, Missouri, right? There's a school district named Rittner that's a very big school district in St. Louis. And they got a grant under Biden to replace all their buses with nice new electric buses.
Oh, yeah.
And they decommissioned their fleet and they started buying the buses. And they bought 8 of them. And the company that was doing them builds them. They don't build them all at once. So they bought 8, and then they were going to get another 24 or something like that, right? The problem is that when when Elon Musk got involved, it fucked up all their money, and so now that school district doesn't actually have any school buses. They're
Oh
literally
god.
cutting routes because they don't have school buses.
Yeah, because people rely on the payments. People rely on, like, all of these things on a day-to-day basis, and if you shut them off for, like, a handful of hours, let alone multiple days, like, things get bad really fast.
And what's going to happen is what Elon Musk wants, which is kind of similar to a fire alarm testing in the sense that these companies that are on the other side, these small businesses, they already have commitments and they already have people they've hired and contractual money that they bought for, they bought things because they expect to get paid. And these companies are going to fold or people are going to quit and go to the private sector. Like, it's going to fuck shit up. And then when people come back and they lose these lawsuits and they inevitably have to go back and try to fix it, the people on the other side aren't gonna exist, so they're just gonna go oopsie doopsie.
Exactly. Like,
Yes, we did a boo boo.
it to them, breaking all of this is a good thing because there's no way to fix it with the legal remedies that could take years. Like, by the time any court case is done, like, they will have already gotten what they want, which is breaking these systems and rebuilding them in their own image.
Oh, and that Cybertruck thing is absolutely fucking insane.
Oh yeah.
So and the worst thing is that they're gonna shield Elon from liability so that they don't get sued when inevitably one of those fucking pieces of shit blow up,
Yep.
and it's gonna be miserable.
Yep.
But anyway, that's an explainer. I'm Paladin Lost. Thanks for listening.
I
I'm out.
really appreciate it, Paladin. You stay classy. So that was nice. That was a good explainer. Thank you. I appreciate it. Um yeah, the issue that we really need to grapple with here is that whether they break it by the issue we need to grapple with is, like, there's not really a way we can stop them from breaking things in this particular way. You know? There's not really a way we can do that. What is the Cybertruck thing? The Cybertruck thing, we'll get to it. Um God. It's all so stupid. It's all so stupid. Um, this is the Cybertruck thing. Ryan Grimm reporting for Drop Site here. Um, yeah, armored Tesla forecast to win $400 million State Department contract after Trump's election. Government document shows. Yeah, so basically, Elon Musk is going to be paid $400 million, almost $500 million, in order to make armored Tesla Cybertrucks for the US government. And keep in mind, folks, those armored Tesla Cybertrucks are, well, normal Cybertrucks are deadlier than the Ford Pinto. They're 17 times more likely to burn you to death in a fire than the previous car that was famous, infamous, I suppose, would be better of saying it, for catching on fire and blowing up with people inside. So, yeah. So these are definitely going to kill soldiers, but not like enemy soldiers. They're going to kill our soldiers. Our soldiers are going to be deployed in these things, and they're going to blow up and kill people. But again, our people, not other people. Entrama, but Jack, this is just a distraction from the real issue of transgender theater plays in Guatemala. It's true. They're transing the kids in Guatemala. That's why we need the armored Cybertrucks. Oh, God. But yeah, I mean, basically, this is a 30-minute long press conference with Elon Musk just not understanding the shit he's saying.
At a high level, you say, well, what are the two ingredients that are really necessary in order to cut the budget deficit in half from 2 trillion to 1 trillion? And it's really two things: competence and caring. And if you add competence and caring, you'll cut the budget deficit in half.
Dude's eyes are just one gigantic pupil at this point.
And I fully expect to be scrutinized and get a daily proctology exam, basically. Might as well just camp out there. So it's not like I think I can get away with something. I'll be scrutinized nonstop. But with the support of the president, we can cut the budget deficit in half from $2 trillion to $1 trillion.
Keep in mind, they're trying to talk about, oh, we're cutting the budget deficit. We're cutting the budget deficit. Meanwhile, their budget plan is designed to spend $4.5 trillion on tax cuts for the wealthiest people to ever exist. Okay? Keep in mind, like, while they're talking about, oh yeah, we're gonna lower the deficit. No, they're not. They're gonna blow a crater through it. They're gonna like bombard that shit from orbit. Like they aren't going to lower the deficit. They're just robbing us blind in order to pay billionaires more money.
And then with deregulation, because there's a lot of sort of regulations that don't ultimately serve the public good. We need to free the bull.
Which ones? You know, anytime someone says something very general like this, I want which ones? Which ones are you talking about?
Of America to build. And if we do that, that means I think we can get the economic growth to be maybe 3-4%, maybe 5%. And that means if you can get $1 trillion of economic growth and you cut the budget deficit by $1 trillion, between now and next year, there is no inflation. There's no.
This is like a spiritual guru trying to explain to you that if you merely focus enough, if you merely hone your chakras, you'll be able to take care of that cancer, no problem.
Reform. Booger will replace the dough when they shut it down. Booger will make sure everyone stays stupid.
I like Booger. I like the Department of Booger.
I honestly never thought these two would speedrun the world economic crash.
Well, again, the wealthiest people in the world love economic crashes. They love them. Especially if in the process of causing one of those crashes, they can get wealthier than any person who has ever existed. Then an economic crash is merely a way for them to exponentially increase their wealth by the time by the time everything recovers. For them, it's just a good business move.
No inflation in 26. And if the government is not borrowing as much, it means that interest costs decline. So everyone's, the mortgage, their car payment, their credit card bills, anything, their student debt, the monthly payment.
These people are so full of shit. Yeah, all your prices will go down. You will just be so efficient that like all your prices are going to go down, guys. By the way, would any of you like to buy a bridge? I promise it will bring great benefits and wealth to you and your family.
Payments drop. That's a fantastic scenario for the average American. I mean, imagine they're going down the grocery aisle and the prices from one year to the next are the same.
Did that kid just shush the Donald Trump? That's kind of funny. I do appreciate that.
And their mortgage, all their debt payments dropped. How great is that for the average American?
We had no idea. We had no idea we were going to find this much, and it's open. It's not.
You know, the great thing is they've been talking now for like 20 minutes. They haven't been able to actually spell out any actual debt. They are not debt. They haven't actually been able to spell out any actual like fraud, like what they're talking about.
Not like complicated. It's
not
simple
that complicated.
Stuff. It's
like
a
lot of work. Yeah.
We can't believe it. A lot of work. A lot of smart people involved. Very, very smart people. But you're talking about anywhere maybe $500 billion. It's crazy the kind of numbers you're talking about. You know, normally when you're looking at something, you'll find.
Wow, that is crazy. You're right, Grandpa. That does sound really crazy. Uh-huh. Yeah, Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right. This sounds like every nurse in a nursing home who is just humoring like a senile patient. Like I feel like that's kind of how you have to treat both of these people.
You're looking for 1 out of 100. You're almost reversing it. You look for one that's good.
Yeah.
And you can look at the title and you say, why are we doing this? Why are we doing that? And the public gets it. The public gets it. You've seen the polls. The public is saying, why are we paying all this money? This for years, this has gone on.
Mr. Musk, President Trump, Senator,
Yeah, go ahead. Wait, go ahead.
Senator Rand Paul today said that Doge cuts will ultimately need Congress. Do you agree with that? Is that the plan?
I really don't know.
Next,
I know this.
Elon Sink will tell Donald Trump to sign an executive order forcing us to pay for a new project demanding Gary, Indiana start a marching band.
We're finding tremendous fraud and tremendous abuse. If I need a vote of Congress to find fraud and abuse, it's fine with me. I think we'll get the vote, although there'll be some people that wouldn't vote. And how could a judge want to hold us back from finding all of this fraud?
See, this is exactly it. This is exactly the core of it. This is why they want to label those payments inside the Treasury processing systems as like fraudulent. They want to flag them, right? This is exactly it, guys. This is the overarching part of their plan. What judge is going to fault me for finding fraud in the system? We'll just define fraud as anything we don't like. And suddenly we can just stop funding anything we don't like. We did like this program, but then we found it was being used for fraud, so we have to shut it all down. This is the usurpation of the constitutional powers of Congress. And the issue is here, folks, very, very, very few people have a full view of anything that the Trump administration is doing right now, because so much has happened, right? It is hard to look at the totality of what is happening and make sense of it, right? And that is complicated by the fact that the reporting on this is absolute dog shit from the vast majority of mainstream articles. And so what is going on here is a deliberate attempt to bamboozle courts so that and lawyers and our entire system so that no one can piece together that, oh, they are fabricating fraud in order to flag payments as fraudulent in order to shut down this entire system. Yeah. Thistles for Eyes, thank you for the $5 dono. Department of Defense created this monster. Elon, it must slay it with the help of USCIS. Department of Defense is the paladin. USCIS is the cleric. Our legislative body is a mage. It's a fraud. It's true. We aren't going to watch the whole thing here. But I am told it is funny. I think maybe this part?
When you're making these decisions. Your work.
Why are we doing that?
After fact check this.
$200 billion a year. Serious money.
Mr. Musk, you said on X that an example of the fraud that you have cited was $50 million of condoms was sent to Gaza. But after fact check this, apparently Gaza in Mozambique, and the program was to protect them against HIV. So can you correct the statements? It wasn't sent to Hamas, actually. It was sent to Mozambique, which makes sense why condoms was sent there.
Yeah.
And how can we make sure that all the statements that you said were correct, so we can trust what you say?
Well, first of all, some of the things that I say will be incorrect and should be corrected. So.
Oh, so he can just lie. you guys understand that? That's him just saying, "Look, I mean, yeah, sure. Sometimes I will lie to your faces, but and I think it's good when I get corrected on those. Yeah, yeah." The press literally had an entire week debunking this instead of focusing on actual substantive issues. But that's like the entire point. The entire point is to keep the press chasing these gooses. These wild gooses. She didn't even get it right. It was 50 million, but it was over 10 years and it was a mix of education, sexual health devices and drugs like AZT. Yeah. Yeah. It's just like the degree to which he is wrong about stuff is really only possible if, he's lying. Because if you looked up this thing, you would know that that is not at all the case, that $50 million wasn't spent to buy Hamas condoms. So where's the correction? You know he's not going to issue corrections.
So nobody's going to bat 1,000. I mean, we will make mistakes, but we'll act quickly to correct any mistakes. I'm not sure we should be sending $50 million worth of condoms to anywhere, frankly. I'm not sure that's something Americans would be really excited about. And that is really an enormous.
Yeah.
In the Republican mind, fraud is when government does stuff, or the government functions at all.
It's true, Malin Miller. But also, yeah, why would Americans want to prevent things like sexually transmitted diseases being transmitted in other countries? I mean, after all, things that happen in other countries never impact people in the United States, right? Right? It's not like we just had like some kind of gigantic global pandemic that killed over 1 million Americans that happened and started in another country. Why on earth would we want to prevent diseases and like the spreading of disease in other countries? Who can say? How would that benefit Americans? I don't know. What's that? Would it have been nice if 1 million Americans hadn't died? Yeah, it would have been really nice if 1 million Americans hadn't died. It'd be nice if, like some of our loved ones were still around. But too bad there's no way to prevent that from happening ever again in the future. Too bad we can't make that happen, huh?
Easiest doom I have ever seen. Can't even take time to come up with a decent lie.
Dude can't. No, like guys, one thing to understand about Elon Musk, and it makes a whole lot of sense, is that his entire life he's been surrounded by sycophants. His entire life he's been surrounded by a group of guys who will just laugh at whatever attempt at a joke he makes, regardless of whether it's funny or not. His entire life he's been surrounded by people who are like, "Oh yeah, bro, that's so deep. That's so deep. That's such a good idea." Because no one's ever told him no. There's never been anyone in his life to tell him no. And so he just does whatever dumb ass idea pops into his head. Whatever lie he comes up with will be, no matter how flimsy, will be enough for the sycophantic empowerers who, hover around him at all times. Okay? Yeah, the one time he was told no was when he wanted to rename PayPal X. And then they booted him off the board, and then he went and just did the same thing at Tesla and just like ripped off that company and tried to say that he had made it. God. He's not lying. He's having a psychotic break. I don't know that he's having a psychotic break because I genuinely can't really tell the difference between his ideas when he's high on ketamine like a kite or when he's, not high on ketamine. His ideas are still bad either way. He's just very clearly on something in this one. I think he is on something in this video, but also, dude always has bad ideas, regardless of his mental state. Now, we have to talk about maybe one of the more important aspects of all of this. Excuse me. Which is, of course, Medicaid cuts. So, one of the things that has been happening is that in order to further the billionaire ambition to steal $4.5 trillion from every single taxpayer in America, is that they actually don't have $4.5 trillion on hand to just give to the wealthiest people to ever exist. So, they have to find it, which means they have to cut trillions of dollars out of the spending of the US government, right? Why are all these lies happening? The lies are happening in order to cover for the greatest theft in the history of the planet. The theft of $4.5 trillion. So, one of those places that they are going to try and get that money is from Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security. Okay? One of the first things that they have announced, Senate, or not Senate, was it House Republicans? House Republicans have been hard at work coming up with budget proposals. And they just publicized their first budget proposal. And it is not looking good. Okay? Essentially, for folks who've been doing the math, House Republicans are looking on making $880 million, or billion, sorry, $880 billion of cuts to Medicaid. Almost $1 trillion. And some outlets like Newsweek are trying to whitewash this a little bit by saying, fact check, does Republican budget cut Medicaid by $880 billion? And, well, the answer is kinda. Because what the budget is saying is that they want to cut $880 billion from, very specifically, the Energy and Commerce Committee. Why the Energy and Commerce Committee? Well, because the majority of the funds that the Energy and Commerce Committee oversees is in fact Medicaid. That is the vast majority of what it oversees. But it also oversees things like climate change, things like a number of other aspects, like the children's health insurance program. They cover a lot of ground there. Food and drug safety, etc. So what they are trying to do is to kind of like soften the blow of announcing a massive cut to Medicaid. Is they're trying to say, we're not cutting Medicaid. We're not doing that. We're just cutting the budget of the, we're cutting the budget of the Energy and Commerce Committee. And it's just that they mostly oversee Medicaid with a few other additional things. Like energy programs, clean renewable energy programs, or climate programs, or the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission. Basically, they want to cut a number of these programs to the absolute bone to make them non-functional. They want the FCC to not function anymore. They want, I'm sure certain aspects of this all to kind of go away. Is everyone who currently relies on government assistance or is just getting by now fucked? Not yet. Not until this passes, you know? Ugh. Adam S 684, why you acting like you got a tiny dick? Why you acting like you got the tiniest dick at the party, at the rodeo? Stop it. Seek to embrace big dick energy, okay? At the very least, you can like kind of project that out into the world, and once you project that out into the world, people might be tricked into thinking you have a big dick. Now, yeah, grow your spiritual dick. Exactly. You somniostatic. You get it. You get it. So, yeah, this is merely an initial proposal, largely trying to they're largely trying to see if they can get away with people not realizing that they're proposing a cut to Medicaid. Adam is she, her. Anyone having big dick energy is a universal quality. You know what? Let's you can try again in a few minutes, Adams. I keep a Johnson in my nightstand. There we go. See? Anyone can have big dick energy. Now, anyway, moving right along here. Alongside these Medicaid cuts, they are also cutting SNAP by about 20%. It's not great. This is from Politico earlier today. House GOP budget plan targets deep SNAP cuts. The higher level of spending cuts in the newly released House Republican budget blueprint means some current food aid benefits for low-income Americans will likely be reduced, according to two GOP lawmakers. House Republicans were already targeting expanded work requirements across Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, which currently helps to feed more than 40 million low-income Americans. But the new plan, to be marked up by the House Budget Committee on Thursday, contains instructions for the Agriculture Committee to slash $230 billion across programs under its purview, meaning work requirements and changes to state waivers alone won't reach that target number. So, yep, that is what they are proposing in their at least their initial budget. Which is why we need to kick up some noise. We need to kick up the pressure. The pressure needs to increase on our elected officials, both Democrats and Republicans, not just for some vague concept of democracy, but for the very livelihoods of the people we care about in our lives, whether they are our friends, our families, our neighbors, or in our online communities, as the case may be. So, folks, if you can, again, I'm calling on you guys to call your elected representatives. There's a really great service called 5calls.org. I'm going to link it in chat here. There you go. There you go. There you go. Where you will be able to call your elected representatives on the things you care about right now. Call to talk to them about the proposed cuts to SNAP. Call to talk to them about the current ongoing attempt to subvert our Constitution. Call, call, call. Choose a different topic each day you call in any given week, because that will make your calls matter that much more to those offices. And make sure you also email. And if you can, consider going there once a week to knock on their door and say, hey, I'm paying attention. This matters to me. If you do not do something, I will die. We have to take action. Go to protests if you can. Indivisible has a great tool here. Okay? To help you find your local protests, or to make your own event. Okay? So if you don't have a protest in your town, make one. Drop flyers around. Now is not the time to be like, oh, well, guess I'll die. Nope, now's the time to make noise. Now's the time to fight. Now is the time we do everything in our power to avoid the worst outcome. You know, we're kind of, yeah, we stepped in the bear trap. But now we kind of have to look at the possibilities, and we have to say, yep, I guess it's time we got to gnaw off our leg. And we'll live to fight another day. That's kind of where we're at. It's not good, it's not fun, it's not ideal, but we can still get through this. Now, there is some light and some some evidence that we can in fact change things. Okay, for example, despite the fact that the Trump administration has come out against transgender
The robber
people,
barons and work with them say they want America to be more powerful than ever. But in reality, a socialist USA would be the most powerful nation in history. Way more powerful than under capitalism.
True, Malin Miller. True, and thank you for the $20 super chat. But despite the fact that the Trump administration dropped an executive order against transgender people, check this out. Army guidance on implementing President Trump's order on transgender troops filed in court today says to not take adverse personnel action against people based on gender identity at this time, and to continue medical treatment for gender dysphoria. So despite the military being ordered to discontinue HRT treatments and to kick, you know, trans members out or hit them with disciplinary stuff, they are in fact saying, no, we will not at this time. You know, it's not a lot. It's kind of worrisome that at this time is in there, but you know what? This is at least in one institution, and a pretty critical institution to have a backbone and a spine in the event of a fascist takeover, I'll add, saying, no, we're not going to do something that is blatantly discriminatory like that. So that is good. And you can say, oh, well, it's only for troop retention. You know what? I don't care. I don't care if it's for the most cynical reason imaginable. What it shows is that there is at least one institution, and notably one institution with an awful lot of firepower, that is saying to the current would-be despots, no. And I think that that is a good thing. Pretty much however you cut it. So that's good. And I'm going to share with you one additional thing that I do think that this is good. And this is kind of a mixed bag on its surface, but this is one thing that I do kind of hope comes to pass. So, we have a news story breaking today from local Miami press. Because there's been a lot of questions surrounding who's going to try to replace Matt Gaetz via special election. And these special elections that are coming up are going to be really important for the spread of, where the House is, right? Notably, we've been thinking of Elise Stefanik's seat in New York as being particularly vulnerable to perhaps a Democrat winning that seat. But this might actually open up a new possibility for us, folks. And that possibility is being opened up by none other than Enrique Tarrio. Now, if you guys don't know who Enrique Tarrio is the leader of the Proud Boys. He is, in fact, a terrorist leader. Sorry. Forgive me if you might not have understood me when I said he's the leader of the Proud Boys. He's the leader of the group formerly known as the Proud Boys. Because just this past week, a judge ruled that a historically black church now has the right to the name Proud Boys. So they no longer are actually called the Proud Boys. They are the group formerly known as the Proud Boys, and that's just kind of funny as hell. But additionally, yeah, absolutely, man. Run a guy who is the leader of a group that is recognized in multiple countries around the world as a terrorist organization, who went to jail for doing a hate crime on a historically black church. You know? I hope it comes to be. Because if so, that opens up a very unique opportunity in Florida for folks to campaign for the Democrat in the special election. Because, look, I know Matt Gaetz was getting elected in this district, and it's kind of a long shot, but understand, like, Democrats aren't nearly as long of a shot in Florida generally as a lot of people believe. I think that we have a shot here. Okay? It is the most Florida thing one could imagine, but you know what? I choose to be hopeful about this district. Okay? I choose hope. As far as like who would have the worst shot possible at winning, this guy might be like the worst Republican choice you could make for that special district. One additional good piece of information, good piece of news. Are we still in the cool zone? Oh, absolutely, PC Schwartz. The current situation that we're existing in is not tenable. You know? We are in a point of tension between the executive branch and the judicial. And like it's existential in nature. The cool zone is just kind of vibrating with tension right now, and we're not really sure which way it's going to go. But we do have one promising piece of information that dropped today, okay? And that is specifically from Judd Legum here. On Monday, Popular Information broke the news that the NIH had frozen virtually all grant funding in violation of 2 federal court orders. On Wednesday, NIH leadership distributed a memo acknowledging that its funding freeze was illegal and directing staff to resume issuing grants. Okay? So this is a good capitulation to see. This is a really good capitulation to see. It remains to be seen if more court orders will follow through like this. But like if like this holds, this is one at least subtle sign that at the very least judicial power is somewhat holding and Trump world is backing down slightly. It remains to be seen if other parts of the Trump administration are going to comply. It remains to be seen if, like, for example, like what damage was done with the US Treasury payment system. That is still the kind of ground zero for this constitutional crisis. But at the moment, I'll fucking take it. I will take this being frozen and us being in a much better spot than we were yesterday or the day before. Because I'm not gonna lie to you guys, on Monday, my stomach dropped out when I saw that they were continuing to violate these orders. So that's kind of where we're at. So we're still very much in a situation where, like, a piece like this from Lawfare, are the courts up to the situation? Um, is very much still a question. And if you are, like I am, worried about that, I would recommend this as a read. Just to kind of like get you up to snuff on what the situation is with the courts, what can they actually do, what is um where are we at? And I do think that while things are really really bad, some of these shifts have been positive for the idea that perhaps the Trump administration is backing down in a number of small ways. So, we'll see. Hexeth was also protested by military personnel yesterday in Germany. Yep. Yep. So that's all of that is good. All of that is really fucking good. Um so that's kind of the state of play where a lot of the major things we've been worried about the last few days have kind of landed. Um there's obviously a lot of other things going on that I haven't gotten to, but that's kind of it. But I will say my major takeaways from today is that while a lot of this tension has yet to be resolved, moves by, for example, the US military and moves by the NIH have made me feel a bit more hopeful that we're not going to see like the worst case scenario here. Okay.
See. And just how huge the quality of life increase would be for them.
Yeah. If I was a politician, I'd want to hammer on about how the facts of how much more money American citizens would have at their disposal under socialist economic policy. I mean, true. I do usually talk about that on my stream. I would love to get back to brass tacks about socialist policy positions that I believe in. And I do think we have good, solid, and compelling arguments for a lot of socialist positioning. Well, yes, Alan Smith, the incompetence of our enemies could absolutely save us. Yes. Malin Miller, thank you for that $20 super chat. I very, very much appreciate that. Appreciate it. And with that being said, like it's just nice to know that the military seems to be very much of the idea that, like, nah, these people are a bunch of whack jobs. We're not gonna like just throw trans people out of the military for no reason. And it's also really nice to see the NIH unfreezing its funds and acknowledging that what it was previously doing was illegal. It remains to be seen, like, if that will follow through in the days ahead, but like those two things by themselves I will take. Because yesterday, as many of you saw, I was not doing okay. I was not doing so hot. These bits of information, small as they may be, helped me just a little bit to feel like maybe we're gonna come out of this relatively okay. You know, that's that's kind of where I'm at. Relatively okay. Doing a lot of work here. fascism succeeds when the military goes along with it? Yes. That is precisely one of my main worries. But I do not think they have the military. And that is good. And with that, we finished it. We did the segment. Huzzah!